Hi, you're on the This Is Crime channel. I'm Matilda. Listen to my new story. One-armed gunman. In the 30s, this maniac became a nightmare of Leningrad. To search for him, released detectives from the camps. A born gunman. About the childhood of the native St. Petersburg resident Alexander Labutkin is known a little. He was born in 1910 in the family of an ordinary worker. The boy's father, Alexei Labutkin, all his life worked at the arms factory Krasnoznamenets. His total length of service amounted to 42 years. Alexander grew up an ordinary child. He was not noticed neither excessive aggression nor deviations in the psyche. However, he did not achieve much success in his studies, so at the age of 17, he went to work at his father's factory. Career of Labutkin Jr. at Krasnoznamenets was quite successful. He quickly took a very prestigious at that time position of a gunner. The young master loved his work and soon learned to shoot equally well with both right and left hands. Labutkin was so good at hitting targets that he always delighted his colleagues, who discussed among themselves. They said that the gunner would make a good sniper. Labutkin's life seemed to be successful. He found his favorite business and had enough money. But an incident that occurred in 1930 crossed everything. On that fateful day, Labutkin was uprooting stumps on his own plot of land, where he wanted to organize arable land. To finish the work as soon as possible, he decided to use the explosive substance pyroxylin, which he secretly stole from his factory. According to other sources, the gunner from Krasnoznamenets was sent to help peasants who were wresting land from the forest for a field and quite legally used TNT checkers for this purpose. Having placed the explosives in the right place, Labutkin wanted to move away to a safe distance, as suddenly there was an explosion. The young man survived, but lost the hand of his right arm, which put an end to his career as a gunner. Most likely, Labutkin used explosives legally. This is evidenced by the fact that he was awarded a pension in connection with the injury received at work. A revolver from the underground. But Labutkin himself was by no means going to remain a pensioner at the age of 20. He got a settlement at Krasnoznamenets, and on the recommendation of the district Komsomol bureau, got a job at the Okhta chemical plant, where he was offered to become a steam conductor, a specialist in pipeline maintenance. Labutkin also arranged his personal life. He met a girl named Maria, who was 3 years younger than him. Soon they married and began to live with Maria's parents near the gunpowder factories on the outskirts of Leningrad. The Labutkin family was considered at that time quite prosperous. They kept livestock and poultry, wore good leather shoes. Maria's spouse was not at all embarrassed that her biography was a dark spot. The girl, despite her young age, managed to serve time for theft. On the crime, Maria pushed passion for luxury and absolute unwillingness to get money legally. Meanwhile, the love of a beautiful life related her to Labutkin. He also sought to dress in the latest fashion and flaunted on the streets of Leningrad in a stylish jacket and a wide-brimmed hat. But he missed his work very much. His passion for shooting never left him. At that time, it was very difficult for an ordinary person to become an owner of a firearm, especially a short-barreled one. But Labutkin found a way out. He turned to a former colleague, an elderly mechanic of the plant Krasnoznamenets. He was a passionate gunsmith and even set up a small workshop in his home. Everything he needed, from cartridge cases and gunpowder to a vise, the elderly master had been smuggling out of the factory since the pre-revolutionary years. He agreed to make a weapon for Labutkin, a revolver of the Nagana system, along with homemade cartridges. Instead of bullets, the gunsmith used balls from bearings. When Labutkin received the cherished weapon, he spent the first couple of months just practicing, remembering his former skills, shooting at cans in deserted places. And then he realized, it's time. Shots in the woods. His first murder, Alexander Labutkin committed in the afternoon of August 29, 1933, in the Pundalovsky forest, now Vsevolozhsky district of the Leningrad region. In general, all his crimes the maniac committed exclusively in the daylight hours, to then have time for the evening work shift. Walking in the woods, Labutkin noticed mushroomers, a worker at the plant Promet and his wife, who were walking home. He killed the couple in cold blood with shots to the head, after which he took off the woman's jacket and the man's shoes, emptied their pockets of change, and took the mushroom boxes. In the evening of the same day, the mushrooms were cooked for dinner in the Labutkin family. He dragged the bodies of the victims into a ditch and covered them with branches, then went home quietly. But the next day he went hunting again in the same Pundalovsky forest. This time, Labutkin caught 3 engineers, a man and 2 women, whom the maniac shot in the head. He stole the victims' coats, watches, shoes, and change from their pockets, but did not notice that one of the victims was still alive. When she and the 2 victims were found by passers-by, they immediately reported it to the police. The guards called doctors, and the surviving victim, Labutkin, was hospitalized. The policemen were on duty under the hospital doors, hoping that the victim would wake up and be able to tell about the attack. But despite all the efforts of doctors, she died without regaining consciousness. After that, terrible rumors spread through Leningrad. In the city, they said that the attacks, and the first 2 victims of Labutkin by that time were also found. This is the tricks of Satan and punishment for the Bolsheviks for their destruction of churches. The detectives were at a loss as to the motives behind the mysterious murders. According to one version, the target of the shooter were specific people, and the rest he killed as unnecessary witnesses. This assumption was confirmed by the fact that the next few months there were no such murders in Leningrad and its vicinity. But the explanation was quite different. Labutkin simply lay low, realizing that his crimes had become high profile. One Satan, one armed bandit, so Labutkin would later be called in Leningrad, lay low until December 2nd, 1933, and then again took up the Nagana. That day, he came across a couple of peasants who were driving a wagon on the Koltush highway. They were returning to their village from Leningrad. Labutkin's loot was 85 rubles, a basket of fish, flour, groats, and a pair of felt boots, all of which he took from the shot victims. The stolen Valenki the murderer later decided to sell, and his wife Maria helped Labutkin in this. By that time, she was well aware of the dark deeds of her husband and did not object to them at all. More than that, over time, Maria turned into an accomplice Labutkin. Pretending to be a prostitute, she lured men to the one-armed bandit. Meanwhile, the news about the murder of the peasants quickly reached the law enforcement agencies of the Leningrad region. They decided to step up patrols in the Rozhevka-Porokovye area, where Labutkin was operating, and asked for support from the nearest military units. The murderer tried to catch the live. Detectives disguised as mushroom pickers or passers-by spent days walking through the surrounding forests. For the sake of catching Labutkin, Leningrad authorities went to an unprecedented step. The search for the maniac involved repressed detectives, who were released from the camp specifically for this purpose. But the one-armed bandit lurked again, and patrols actively searched for him until April 1934. Then the search ended. The authorities of Leningrad decided that the long hunt for a mysterious killer is too expensive. And as soon as the law enforcement agencies relaxed their vigilance, Labutkin struck again. Love Trap, April 11th, 1934. One armed bandit attacked a worker in the Pundalovsky forest. He was returning home with his paycheck. A strange girl approached him, and they got to talking. The stranger hinted to the laborer that she was not overly moral, and suggested that he find some place where he could get some privacy and have a good time. It did not take long to persuade the man, and he followed the girl, who turned out to be the wife of the maniac Labutkin. Maria brought the worker straight to her husband, and he shot the victim in cold blood with a Nagana. The worker did not even have time to understand anything. After this crime, a set of locksmith tools, spare parts for door locks, 150 rubles, and 2 gold crowns appeared in the house of the Labutkins. The spouse's associates did not hesitate to take even them. At the same time, in the area of Rzhevka-Porokovye, reinforced patrolling was resumed, but Labutkin got wind of it and went underground again. His search was again in vain, but the police still got a small clue. From Maria's footprints at the scene of the crime, they realized that the killer is helped by an accomplice. His one-armed bandit stopped until November 1934 and then decided to act, but already in the Yutkinsky forest, now Vyborg district of the Leningrad region. Wandering there in search of victims, Labutkin noticed a janitor who made bird catching his hobby and came to check the snares. The fate of the victim was predetermined. The maniac put a bullet in the back of the birdcatcher's head and took away the dead man's boots, money, and captured birds. The latter settled in the house of the Labutkin family, which pleased the mother-in-law of the maniac. By that time, she already knew about the bloody craft of her son-in-law, but treated him quite calmly. The mystery of the motive. Meanwhile, detectives, going on the trail of the killer, time after time found themselves in a dead end. He almost did not leave clues, and witnesses to his crimes were simply not. In addition, the investigators mistakenly believed that they are looking for a robber who acts for profit. Labutkin was a maniac, but a peculiar one. In general, what prompted him to pick up a gun and start killing remains a mystery. According to one version, Labutkin could have lost his mind after he became a cripple. The rejection of his physical defect resulted in aggression to others. According to another, to push the one-armed bandit on the criminal path could be his wife, Maria. She was always short of money, and she scolded her husband for his earnings, which did not cover her requests. But this version is hardly plausible. Too modest time after time was the booty of Labutkin. There is another important point. As a rule, robbers try not to kill their victims without urgent need, because each death greatly adds to their sentence in case of capture. But Labutkin spared no one, and did not even try to do without bloodshed. Since the murders did not bring him much profit, it means that the one-armed bandit did not act out of greed. His motives were different. But he does not look like a typical maniac who mocks his victims for the sake of perverse pleasure. All of Labutkin's victims were killed with a single shot to the head. Therefore, the one-armed bandit is considered a maniac whose motives remain unknown. The heart is not to order. Before Labutkin fell into the hands of justice, he managed to kill 4 more people. January 11th, 1935, in Kolonetsky Forest near Leningrad, he killed a married couple, the husband engineer and wife dispatcher. The maniac took the Valenki, money, and pawnshop receipts and hid the bodies in a ditch. Soon there was a heavy snowfall, and the bodies were swept away. They were found only in spring. A month later, Labutkin shot a man in the Pundalovsky forest. And on March 18th, one-armed bandit went out on another forest hunting, not suspecting that it will be the last for him. He spotted a couple in love. A waiter of a restaurant in a Leningrad hotel was strolling along with his girlfriend, according to other sources, an ordinary prostitute. Labutkin crept up to them and fired 2 shots. The shot was fatal for the young man, while the girl recoiled to the side, and the bullet only grazed her tangentially. Labutkin realized his mistake only when he took off the victim's jewelry. However, instead of killing the girl, the one-armed bandit raped her, set a date for the next day, and let her go. And further versions diverge. According to one, the victim herself went to the police. According to the second, she seriously began to consult with a friend whether she should go on a date with the one-armed bandit. They say he won her heart. The friend listened attentively to the girl and then rushed to the detectives. Hour of reckoning. It was not difficult for the police to identify the shooter without a right hand. During the search in the house of Labutkin's detective found things of some of the victims: boots, pants, hats, fur coats. All this spouses dealers made part of their closet. Maria Labutkina sewed a fur collar from the jacket of one of the murdered women onto the coat of a child they shared with Alexander. During the search at the Labutkins found 3 shotguns, but the detectives realized they need a completely different weapon, a homemade revolver. But even turning everything upside down, they never found the nagant. Labutkin himself, realizing perfectly well that he was going to be shot, kept silent like a partisan. But then the attention of one of the policemen was attracted by a radio receiver standing in the room. The operative trusted his intuition, unscrewed the device, and found a revolver and cartridges carefully hidden there. Before the court of the Special Conference of the NKVD of the USSR appeared not only himself, one armed bandit, but also his wife Maria, mother-in-law locksmith, who made the revolver, and even a neighbor Labutkin. He, as it turned out, knew about all the crimes, but kept silent. The accomplices of the maniac received sentences from 5 to 20 years in camps, and Maria Labutkina was deprived of parental rights. The murderer himself was sentenced to the same fate as all his 12 victims. In 1935, the life of the one-armed bandit was cut short by the executioner's bullet. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and put a thumbs up. Look forward to more stories from the team of our channel. This is Criminal.